Governments in Germany, the UK, Canada, Ireland, and Australia have all uncovered horrific abuse at orphanages. But America has never reckoned with the effects of the orphanage system, even though, during the 20th century, more than 5 million kids passed through it. Many of them weren't actually orphaned. Oftentimes, they had young single mothers, or parents who struggled with alcohol, the law, or simply couldn't afford to raise them. In the mid-1990s, more than 100 former residents of St. Joseph's Orphanage in Burlington, Vermont, came forward and said they had been brutally abused. But neither Vermont nor the federal government pressed criminal charges. If survivors wanted justice, it would be up to them to try to get it on their own. 28 of them sued the diocese, the order of nuns that ran the orphanage, and the local government agency that oversaw it. Sally Dale lived at St. Joseph's from age 2 to 23, perhaps longer than any other child. She said the nuns there beat her regularly.
That photograph is a photograph of you at a time when you were receiving virtually daily beatings at the hands of people at the St. Joseph's Orphanage?
Yes, sir.
Repeatedly locked her inside a small container that was kept in the attic.
I could not really sit up straight. I definitely couldn't stand up. And you really couldn't lay down flat.
And sexually abused her.
After whatever happened in her bedroom, she'd bring me by the hair and bring me back to my bed. Of course, before that, she'd spank me in her room. Could tell me I was a bad girl. In the morning when we got up, she would have me sitting on the floor beside my bed, and she would make all the other kids laugh at me and tell them what a bad girl I was during the night.
But those aren't the most serious allegations.
I saw somebody push a boy out the window, and I was looking up at the building, and to tell you who the nun was, I can't say, but I knew it was a nun because she had the habit. And he kind of hit and...
Bounce?
Well, I guess you'd call it. It was a bounce. And then he laid still.
Sally also said she saw a boy drown after he was thrown off a rowboat and into a lake.
All I said is, did he drown?
Who'd you say that to?
To the nun. And she said, oh, don't worry, he's gone home for good.
Many other kids from St. Joseph's told similar stories. This is Ed Dupree, explaining how he was thrown off a boat.
I was fighting for my life when I was swimming ashore.
And did this happen to other children?
Oh, yes. Yes. All the time that I was there, it happened. Every summer.
Patty Zeno said a nun named Sister Priscilla tried to push her off a windowsill when she was standing on the outside washing the window.
The windows were open, probably like this, so that they could hold you by your ankles. And she just went.
Okay. And what happened?
I started to fall.
Back when she was Sister Doris Wagner, raped by a priest in her convent.
If people knew, they wouldn't trust the church anymore. So I had to protect the church, and that's why I had to keep silent.
You didn't want to say a priest was abusing you because you didn't want to hurt the church?
Yeah.
The then 24-year-old nun from a poor German family felt silenced by the system.
This experience of being sexually abused does not fit in what they tell you the life of a nun should be like. And any sister who will come to the point to understand that she has a right to speak out about it will be blamed and shamed and silenced by her own superiors and fellow sisters.
That's the case in India, where since September, 5 nuns have rallied in support of their sister, who has claimed she was raped by her bishop 13 times. Indian law protects the identity of the victim, so the nuns' sisters have raised their voices.
At least the Pope should see our tears, and we cannot no words to say how much we are suffering.
The bishop, Franco Mulakal, denies the charges. The nuns sent letters to the Vatican's ambassador in India, but got no reply. Doris Wagner fears protecting nuns is a long way off, since bishops are only now discussing their accountability in protecting minors.
Shouldn't they be aware that they are accountable? Why do we need a summit for that?
Wagner left her order of nuns and says today the majestic St. Peter's Basilica is a symbol of power, the power to silence victims.
Treatment of 10,000 women and girls incarcerated in Catholic church-run Magdalene laundries. There they were treated as virtual slaves, some still open right up until the 1980s. Well, in tune now, though, the Irish government trying to decide what to do with the children's remains, leave them be or give them a proper burial. The final decision due to be revealed in February 2019, a long and painful wait for survivors of the home. Well, France 24's Julie Dungelhoff and Aurore Chloe Dupree revisit Tuam for France 24.
My pants wouldn't be washed for months and months. So they'd be, if I wanted to take off my pants, the pants would actually stand up. It was that filthy.
I believe in one Lord, Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God, born of the Father before all ages, God from God, light from light.
And I used to try to cover my head in, and then I tried to fall off the sleeve. I could, but the nice them, terrible screech, terrible roar ran up from them, and the nuns shouting back and shut up.
I believe in one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. I confess one baptism for the forgiveness of sins.
And these nuns inside are supposed to be following God's footstep and supposed to be helping the poor and people that needed help, and just kept closing the door.
And I look forward to the resurrection of the dead and the life of the world to come. Amen.
We accepted it because there was nothing we could do about it. They had the power.
And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. And they worshipped the dragon which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him?
In Ireland, up until the 90s, many children born out of wedlock were brought up in homes, financed by the state and run by nuns. Some were fostered out, others never came out alive. In the small town of Tuam, Western Ireland, the remains of hundreds of children were found in a sewage facility underneath the housing estate where used to lie the mother and baby home.
The bodies are just over here now inside the thing. This is where they found the tank inside the wall here.
Oh, yes. That area there now where they built house there, didn't they get bones there?
They came across...
were they human bones?
They were human bones, yeah.
On average, one child died every 2 weeks between the 1920s and the 60s. The forgotten angels, they're called, who came back to haunt the Catholic country. Patrick, Joseph and Walter endured 7 years at the home, run by the Bon Secours sisters.
You had the same probably routine every day. There was no love, there was no toys, there was nothing whatsoever. And you were just locked in this big building. And if you looked out as well, the walls were so high that you didn't see anything. It was like a prison, really.
We were reared in such a way that we were told nothing. I don't remember leaving here. I don't remember being brought to a foster home or anything like that.
The religion, the Catholic Church and the state here are all at fault for making life hell on us. Because I remember I used to be called a bastard. That's the name that on us, because being born out of wedlock. When my mother got pregnant, she had to take all the blame for it. She was a sinner because she didn't obey God's commandment that she shouldn't have got pregnant. It was enough to punish the mother, but why punish the child? There was no need of it.
Catherine Corliss used to go to the same school as them, and she always wondered why some of these kids, so skinny and dressed in rags, never made it to the classroom. Decades later, the amateur historian started doing some research at the local cemetery.
This plot here is called an angel's plot. It's where the children of the Tuam families are buried.
Catherine ploughed through hundreds of death certificates, archives, maps, but found no burial records for 796 children.
I met the keeper of the graveyard who has the book that lists everybody who is buried here. The 796 were not in his book, which means they're not buried here. So my next quest then was, where are they buried?
The Irish government eventually carried out scientific tests and confirmed Catherine's theory. Significant quantities of human remains, aged 0 to 3, are located in a mass grave underneath the nun's property.
This little one is 1939. Her name was Annie. She was only 3 months old, and she died of epilepsy. His name is Gerard. He was 1 month old, and he was the son of a domestic, which was put down for them all, and he died of a respiratory infection. A lot of those diseases, they weren't fatal if they were treated on time, and if they got the proper medication and the proper care. I do believe that they could have saved quite a lot more of them.
Amongst the victims, Marion Bridget, a little girl that Peter Moore Ryan has been searching for over the past 3 years, his younger sister. Both of them were born at the home, yet he never knew about her until Catherine Corliss contacted him.
We hope it's not closed, you know.
Peter is heading to Tuzla, the Child and Family Agency. That's where the home's documents were transferred when it closed in 1961. Admissions, adoption, medical records. Peter demands justice, the release of his sister's files. Our cameras are not welcome here.
So this is a surprise.
Oh no, I'm looking for my sister's
In relation to Marion
file.
Bridget.
That's it, yeah. I want to see that, you know, yeah.
And you see, there isn't a file on Marion Bridget.
Why?
There never was a file on Marion Bridget.
I was shocked to hear that because I thought everyone having the plant born in this planet should have some record. Like, she's just adamant. But then as I asked the question, why weren't we told this long ago by their barrister to our barrister? And that didn't happen. It looked very false, like, you know.
Peter and the other survivors feel they're up against a wall of silence. Caught in the media frenzy, the government only confirmed the existence of the mass grave in March last year.
This is St Peter's former approved school in Gainford, County Durham. From 1940, it was an institution for troubled boys aged 10 to 15 until it closed in 1984. It now stands abandoned on the edge of the village. A recent discovery of sinister messages sprayed in graffiti inside the building has led to growing speculation online. Rumours suggesting that in the past, serious sexual abuse may have been carried out by members of staff on former pupils. This film is an investigation into whether there's any truth behind the rumours. I wanted to meet people who went to St Peter's to find out if the allegations were true. I spent weeks leaving messages on forums and posting letters. Eventually, someone got in touch.
So I am on my way to Derby right now to speak to a man called Tony, who actually spent several years in the late 50s and early 60s in Gainford at St Peter's. I haven't spoken much to him yet, but the things that he has told me lead me to think that he didn't have a particularly pleasant time there. So we're going to go and have a chat face to face, and hopefully he can shed at least a little bit of light about what went on there. Hi.
Hi.
Tony?
Yes, hello.
Hi, I'm Joanna. Lovely
Hello,
to meet you.
Hi, come in please.
Thank you.
Hi.
Tony has been researching St Peter's for a number of years in an attempt to piece together gaps in his own personal experiences.
I ended up in St Peter's because I come from a family of 10, and it was a very difficult home environment. There there was a lot of violence in my home between my father and my mother, so that we ran away a lot, got into trouble, stealing things from school.
We talked briefly on the phone about the culture of sexual abuse that was...
Yeah, I was sexually abused 4 days by Mr. Darby, with an A, not an E. He used to come and collect me, usually after dinner when I'd be out playing. It was summer. The sort of thing he would say to me was that, did I know why I hadn't gone home, things like that, which I didn't know. You know, I'm 10 and a half. And he would say that it was because they didn't care about me, because I was unwanted. And then he would sort of start touching me, took my trousers off, took his trousers off, sat down in a chair, sat me in front of him on like a little, whatever you call it, footrest, and began to masturbate it, made him put my hand on his penis, masturbate him. He made threats, you know, that I wasn't to tell anybody else. This would stop me getting less pocket money, less, just general bribery, you know.
Like many young offenders institutions, St. Peter's was run by the Catholic Church, under the control of the Diocese of Hexham and Newcastle. Tony requested access to their archives, and after a drawn-out process of several months, he finally received information relating to his time spent there as a boy.
I don't believe I got all the information that I have about me. I'm interested in getting some resolution for myself, you know.
Some closure?
Yeah. You know, because I know I didn't imagine things that happened to me. I know they happened. But nowadays it's all about evidence and proof, and the people who've got all the evidence and proof, they ain't coming forward with it. I think it's too late for me. I don't think I'll ever get any, if you like, justice for what happened to me in that school, because I think the elements are gone. I think the evidence is gone. I think the people are gone. Particularly, I think the perpetrators will be gone. I think it's affected the way I relate to people, my emotional state, my psychological state. I think it fucked me up, basically, emotionally and psychologically. I don't let people touch me. I cut my own hair. I don't even let a hairdresser touch my hair, you know. So it's had quite a devastating effect in terms of how my life's been. It's always there, you know.
Yeah, definitely. We'll keep in touch with you and let you know of any...
Yeah, that's the main thing for me. Bye night then.
Thanks, Tony.
Take
See you
care.
later.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Ciao.
It only took the brief hour I spent with Tony to transform this story from rumour into reality. He confirmed he'd been abused as a child by someone named in the graffiti. My next stop was Gainford, County Durham. I wanted to see the remains of St. Peter's for myself.
I'm about to get my first glimpse of St. Peter's, and almost on cue, this kind of spooky mist has descended upon the town. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. God, it is quite imposing, isn't it? You've seen danger, keep out.
These days, the building has become a destination for ghost hunters and urban explorers. The locals consider it a blight on the otherwise picturesque landscape. Most want the building demolished, but its future hangs in the balance as the local parish council is in the midst of a battle between two companies who each own part of the site.
It's not particularly beautiful. I mean, it's derelict, obviously. It's a bit of an eyesore, and I can understand why the village folk are not particularly happy with it being here. I'm going to meet a man called Mike Stowe, who's a local historian, who I'm told is the authority on everything to do with Gainford. So I'm hoping he's going to be able to tell me a bit more about St. Peter's. Hi, I'm Joanna. Nice to meet you.
Paulie, my wife,
Hi,
Paulie.
nice to meet
I've got 3 photographs of St. Peter's, how it was when it was an orphanage.
you. Wow, it's much bigger, isn't it?
You were threatened with it if you lived in the village. If you don't behave yourself, you'll go to the naughty boys' school.
Mike's dad, John, worked as a maintenance engineer at St. Peter's in the 1950s, and as a child, Mike lived on the site in staff quarters.
Do you remember any of the teachers who worked there at that time when you were a child?
Yes.
Which ones? Can you tell me a bit about them?
Most of them were pretty okay.
What do you mean most?
Well, not all.
Which ones weren't?
Well, there were some that we thought were a bit dodgy.
Can you just tell me what you mean by dodgy?
Effeminate. Could have abused children there, yes.
Okay. And which ones were those?
I can't really say that, can I, on film?
I think you can.
No. Well, I'm not prepared to anyway.
Okay. Are they still alive?
No,
do you know?
no.
They're not. Yesterday, on our way up here, we went to speak to a man who was in St Peter's as a boy. He was sexually abused by Mr. Darby. Does that surprise you at all?
No. I think there may have been one or two people in the school, either teachers or house staff, that could have been that way inclined. And one of the persons involved could have been the headmaster. He's dead now.
Mr. Byrne?
It's suggested that he could have been.
Do you think at the time the other staff
Knew?
Yes.
No, no.
You don't think they knew?
When I first started there, I overheard a conversation regarding buggery by the children, right? And it was directed against the man I mentioned before.
Mr. Byrne?
Yeah, who within months left the place, and that was the end of it.
And why did he leave?
I think things had got a bit hot and people had realised that it could well be the case that he was an abuser, and so somehow he was moved on.
Mike confirmed that more than one member of staff could have been abusing pupils. Most notably James Byrne, who was employed as a teacher from 1947 and left as headmaster in 1971.
I'm on my way right now to talk to another former pupil of St Peter's who actually got in touch with me. He's quite keen to talk about his experiences, but he wants to remain anonymous.
In 1965, at the age of 12, Robert was serving a 2-year sentence at St Peter's for a series of petty crimes. The most serious was stealing a tin of OXO from the local shop. And what were the staff like?
Most of them weren't too bad, but any punishment, I mean, you would get slapped up. What they'd done, they just got you, and you had to put your head to one side and then they'd slap you full across the face. And you might get 4 or 5 or 6 of them, you know. Obviously we were kids, and we were all crying when that happened, but that would be daily. There was one called Mr. Darby. There was lots of rumours about him, you know, but he wasn't a nice guy at all, you know. Everybody avoided him. I was never actually raped, but I know that it did happen on some occasions to some boys. You know, that was generally Mr. Darby. But with me, it was the headmaster, John Burns. He would send somebody to go tell him I want him in my room. And I'd go in and he used to make me take my clothes off, and then he'd pull me onto his knee and he'd start interfering with me.
And was he disrobed at this time as well?
No.
So he was still fully clothed,
yeah.
But you were naked?
Yeah.
And he started
he used to play with himself when he was doing it.
He was playing with himself
yeah.
as well as you?
Yeah. And then he'd say, put your clothes on, leave. That was it. He never spoke to me or anything. But every time he did it, I absconded straight afterwards.
How many times did that happen?
Probably 8 or 10 times.
So quite a few times?
Yeah, yeah.
Robert claims he was abused by James Byrne 10 times over the course of a single year. Do you think this was going on to other boys at the school besides you?
I know it was. You never knew who. And they had a priest there, Vincent Duffy. He was a nice little old man, but he was very touchy-feely. He'd forever cuddling you and then be playing with your ass. But apart from that, he was a nice guy, you know. He never went any further than that. You just had to be quick on your feet around him. You couldn't get away with it these days, could you?
No. Did you ever say anything to the police or any of
No.
the authorities
No,
about what
nobody.
happened to you?
Nobody.
Why did you not?
I don't know. I think we were all ashamed of it. Because they're all preaching all the time. It was a Catholic approach school. And they were forever going on about God and Jesus and church and all this, and then doing that. You know, which goes against everything.
So do you think that the church were involved in some sort of cover-up?
They had to know. You know, they had to.
Robert did nothing to dispel the rumours. Instead, he confirmed he was sexually abused by Headmaster Byrne. He also suggested the resident priest, Father Duffy, behaved inappropriately towards the children of St. Peter's.
And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration.